This is Autoline This Week, the show that gets you inside the global automotive industry. Autoline This Week partnered with the Consulate General of Canada in Detroit to produce this episode. And now, here is your host, John McElroy.
Thanks for joining us on Autoline This Week. Today, the discussion is going to be all about Mazda, and that's because we've got the president of Mazda North America, Jeff Guyton, joining us today. Jeff, come on in here. Hello, and thanks for being on the show.
Good morning, John. Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
I'm excited to get into these things, but first we have to bring a couple of my colleagues in. Chris Paukert, who's with Roadshow by CNET. Hello there, Chris.
Wonderful to be back. Thank you.
Yeah, and we've got Brian Armstead from Autoserve Roadgear. And hello, Brian. Good to have you on the show as well.
Good to be back on, John. Thanks for having me.
Jeff, we have a lot to talk about, all about Mazda. I guess I'll kick it off. This is an easy one, but man, Mazda so far in 2020 is outperforming every other automaker in the market. Your sales are down, but your sales are down far, far less than any other automaker. As a result, you're picking up market share. And I guess my question is, what's going on here? Why are you doing less worse than everyone else?
Well, thanks for the question and this discussion. What's interesting to us when we look at market share in Mazda, because we're modestly sized and we don't participate in the whole industry in the US, when we look at our share, actually it's tempting to see it as something that's exploded after the whole COVID crisis began. But we actually saw it beginning to trend well at the end of last calendar year, after the introduction of CX-30. And there are a number of factors, including CX-30, but we've seen a pretty steady upward trend since then. And we're really excited, first about CX-30, but also about the fact that we have now completed more than 140 of our, we call them retail evolution outlets. And that's really changing the face of Mazda in the United States, both in terms of appearance and also customer experience. Then coming out of the pandemic, we also launched a partnership with Mazda Financial Services, which is powered by Toyota. And that's also making a big impact on our sales. So we see a pretty steady upward trend for our share, starting even before the pandemic.
Well, I'll follow up on those questions then. It sounds to me that you're revamping your dealer network, and by tying up with Toyota Financial Services, you finally got some captive finance that you can offer to your customers and probably your retailers as well. Yes, indeed.
I think, many people wouldn't understand the change between a third-party bank and a captive bank. And the difference is, in some respects, subtle. But if you're working with even a top-line third-party bank, as we did previously with Chase, the bank comes to the table to make money for the bank and its shareholders, and they do that by selling cars with the OEM, and that's great. But what happens once you are working with a captive? Yes, the captive wants to make money too, but their first mission is to sell cars, and by doing so, make money. And it's a very different way to come to market, and it's much more of a partnership. And so far, we're very impressed with what we've seen, and so are our dealers and our customers, for that matter.
Jeff, you alluded to the fact that right now Mazda doesn't participate in the entire automotive market, and certainly it's been that way for the duration. Do you feel like you've got the right-sized product portfolio right now, or are you looking to expand into other segments?
Well, certainly, my comment really refers to most obviously large pickup trucks, where this is a huge part of the U.S. market that we're not really in, or we're not in at all. And we're not going to be. But we are looking to expand our lineup, certainly. And the crossover product that you will eventually see from the new factory that we're building in Alabama will be one extension. And we have some others in the pipeline that we're working on.
Jeff, can you talk a little bit about what retail evolution means, that whole concept?
So retail evolution is not only an image program. Most automakers have an image program where they ask dealers to build fancy stores and whatnot. But retail evolution is a couple of things. One, yes, it is a beautiful facility that's designed around the customer. But one of the important things that we're doing with that program is also to really package a great deal of training and brand training with that facility, and also to build into the architecture of the facility a different process for customers, both for sales and for service, which is much more, let's say, modern and pleasant, if you will. And what that does is the training and the facility work together to provide a much better experience. And actually, we see that in terms of customer experience for service, tremendous results, and also an increasing level of loyalty and throughput for the dealers who are operating those stores. So we're on track for 300 or more of those facilities in a couple of years' time, which should be selling 80% or more of all the new Mazdas in the US. Right now, we've got 141 of them completed, and we're adding 5 to 8 more outlets every single month.
Jeff, I'd like to go back to your product statement there that you're not going to get into full-size pickups. But Mazda, historically, in the U.S. market, has had a midsize pickup. Any thoughts getting into that segment?
Well, for many years, we've had a very good offering in Asia. From our plant in Thailand, still do. Now with the next generation of B-Series pickup. But we're not planning to bring that to the U.S.
Yeah, why not? I mean, given the off-road craze that Americans seem to be going through, a mid-sized pickup, a compact pickup would be, a tuner's delight, particularly with with Mazda or Toyota lineage. Think of Bronco and the success of Jeep and the Gladiator. Everybody seems to want this off-road cred, even if they never take their vehicles off-road, and a compact pickup would certainly, fit that bill if you were to have special editions of such. Why miss out on such a lucrative market here, Jeff?
Well, we are a modestly sized business, and I think we can do anything. We just can't do everything.
I see.
So we're going to focus for the time being on our crossover lineup, which is doing remarkably well.
Mazda's been pushing up market some, trying to enhance its image and go to a more premium product and also customer. I was wondering if you could characterize how that's going, if you're looking at higher average transaction prices, if your customers are walking in and they're, higher credit levels and that sort of thing. If you could talk to that a little bit.
Yeah. Okay. So in terms of product, what we were seeing is, we brought out the Mazda 3 last year, last spring of 2019, and many people were critical about the volume of that product at the time because in years gone by, Mazda 3 was a huge seller for our brand, and much more modest volume now. But actually, we brought that vehicle out with a starting price around $20,000. And that's a bit too high as an entry-level product in the U.S. market. What's interesting about Mazda 3, when you look at our share at different price points, by the time we got to a $25,000 level or so and above, which actually there's not so many people buying there, but Mazda was getting 10% of that market. So the interesting thing is that our strategy to bring in people who want to buy towards the top end of the segment is working. And Now what we're doing with the introduction of Mazda 3 Turbo is to give an even more compelling reason to buy Mazda at the, let's say, the top end. That, interestingly, the volume problem on C cars is the industry. But as we look now taking that technology to CX-30, CX-30 has been steadily improving its share since our launch late last year. And we had our best month ever for CX-30 sales in July. So I think the progression is working, and we see quite some transition for the brand.
Jeff, you ran Mazda in Europe for a number of years. Mazda does very well in Europe. My guess is, you can correct me on this if I'm wrong, that it's perceived as a more premium brand there than it is here. But I guess that's a long way of just asking you, were there lessons learned in Europe that were successful that you can translate to the U.S. market?
Well, we're always proud historically of being able to say that Mazda was one of the few brands whose market share in Germany was higher than the average share we held in Europe. Partly because our R&D focus, our R&D center sits in Germany, and we're very focused on German premium brands and how they performed in that market. But I think the important thing that we had in Europe, which is coming to the US, is really engaged operators who are keen to provide a great experience to customers. And while that has certainly been true in the US to some extent, back to the retail evolution concept, we are bringing that now to the US with great force.
Jeff, can you talk a little bit about the Koreans, the South Koreans? They're coming on like gangbusters, Hyundai and Kia. I was in the Kia 5 yesterday, a pair of them actually. They brought a pair for me to test drive over a 24-hour period. Sensational small, sensational midsize sedans. What kind of heat is Kia bringing to Mazda, and what are you going to do about it?
Well, I wouldn't care to talk too much about others' products, but what I can say is that we have relatively limited cross-shop with some of those brands. Certainly in some segments we do, but generally speaking, relatively limited cross-shop. So Mazda is, we're playing our own game. We're one of the few brands that's growing currently, and that Mazda 3 Turbo and some other products you'll be seeing will be bringing more share to Mazda in the future.
But to talk about, just real quick, Chris, you talk about, continuing to grow the brand in a premium fashion. And I hate to have my shovel out and digging for details here, but will we see a Mazda 7 or another rebirth of a Mazda rotary powered sports car to compete with Supra and some of the other hot hatches that are coming, that are on the market now? Can you share any of that with us?
Well, what I can say is, of course, we have talked about recently a larger platform with inline powertrains, and clearly those are going to bring potentially larger vehicles to our lineup, more power to our lineup, which is the vector that we want to go towards a more premium the more premium end of the market.
Jeff, you alluded to the new Mazda 3 Turbo. There was a lot of idle internet chatter for a long time about this possibly being a new Mazda Speed 3. That sub-brand has been dormant for an awfully long time. Is it dead, or will we see it crop up in the future?
Well, I would put it this way. As luck would have it, I was able to drive the Mazda 3 Turbo yesterday here in California, which is sort of the final sign-off prototype before we begin mass production. And that car is tremendous. And some of our engineers in Japan have told me they think, in terms of balance and excitement, it's the best, perhaps the best car we've ever made. Now, it is not a pocket rocket hot hatch car. It is a much more grown up and very well balanced product, but with a lot of torque and a lot of excitement. So I think it's different than the Mazda 3 Speed jackhammer that we had years ago, which is fun. But this is a much more refined and balanced product that I think will really suit the buyers that we're going for.
Jeff, Mazda is working with Toyota, building a new assembly plant in the United States. That's going to bring a lot of potential volume to the Mazda brand. If I read it right, you're going to be allotted 150,000 units of production a year out of that plant. Your total sales in the US in a really good year are roughly 300,000. Are you just going to move that much more production from Japan to the US? I mean, right now, the only product in your line that would support that volume is the CX-5. Or do you have something new coming that you think is just going to sell that much more?
Well, we are clearly out of Alabama. We are certainly looking to grow our business in the United States. There's no question about that. And we think that the confluence of the new product that we're bringing, the retail evolution network that we will have in place over the next 18 months and have already got about halfway done, the new financial services arm that we've put in place, and will give us a solid leg up in terms of growing our share in the U.S.
Mazda's always done more with less. You have fewer platforms, fewer engines. You've basically got one transmission at this point, and you've done a remarkable amount with very little. Is that something that's harder to do when you start yoking yourself to Toyota a bit more, or expanding your product portfolio while moving up market?
Well, interestingly, I think the joint work with Toyota is quite an interesting dynamic, because part of what I think attracted Toyota to Mazda is the fact that we get so much done with so little. And if Toyota can have a little of that, that's wonderful. And if Mazda can share a little bit of the tremendous capabilities and wealth of technology that Toyota has, that's a tremendous opportunity for Mazda. So it's a very interesting partnership, if you will. And when I visited Alabama not so long ago, they took me through their so-called war room, where we're building up the processes in each one of the manufacturing departments, whether it's paint or trim and final or stamping and so forth. And in each one of those departments, there's a bit of paper on the wall that says, okay, here are the key 8 or 10 technologies that we are using in this department of the plant. And here are the ones which are we borrowed from Toyota. Here are the ones we borrowed from Mazda. And here are the ones which our manufacturing engineers from both companies working together have come up with something new. And it's an interesting blend of all these Mazda and Toyota technologies that are creating something brand new and hopefully state-of-the-art for that manufacturing facility.
Jeff, can you talk a little bit, please, about the whole COVID-19 experience from the corporate level in terms of safety protocols that you've taken at your factories, but most importantly, safety protocols that you've taken at your stores to keep your consumers protected as you continue to grow market share even in the middle of a pandemic?
Yeah, certainly. So that has been one of the highest priorities. I guess anyone you talk to would say that, but that has been one of the highest priorities for our business. We are, to some extent, blessed that Japan has been very aggressive in containing the virus, and even of late, while there's some escalation, unfortunately, in the Tokyo area, way out in Western Japan, where we are, cases are thankfully very, very low. Nonetheless, we have enacted all of the distancing, and the masks were pretty common in Japan anyway.
Right.
But we have enabled people to safely distance in the factory, and also made time in our work schedule for cleaning and disinfecting and so forth. On the dealer side, it is very similar in terms of making sure that we have the ability to do where we're allowed to be open for sales and so forth, to make contactless delivery, to do enhanced car cleanings for customers, so that we've disinfected vehicles that we've been in to service and so forth. And we've provided those guidelines to our dealers in terms of how to properly disinfect a vehicle and what chemicals to use that are safe for the car, so that there's no damage to the vehicle, but also it's disinfected and so forth. One of the other trends that, of course, is out there is allowing customers to interact digitally with dealers and get home delivery or make the deal from home and so forth, and have limited contact personally with dealer staff. And we have worked quite hard to enable our dealers to do that. We advanced our digital sales capabilities, I would say, quite ahead of our desired schedule or our intended schedule, to make that technology available to our dealer network en masse, so that could take place.
And very quickly, just one real quick, John. Has Mazda done anything in the community philanthropically to support the COVID-19 effort?
Yes, thank you for asking that. I mentioned, didn't give justice to our enhanced car care program, which was actually offering to healthcare workers, no matter what kind of car they drove, to bring it to Mazda for a free oil change and a free enhanced cleaning, essentially disinfecting the high-touch surfaces of the car. We did that for free, no matter what brand you had. More than 50,000 people came. So who knows what the future evolution of that will be, but it's certainly something where we felt very strongly we wanted to give back to those people who are on the front lines taking care of all of us.
I'd like to build on Brian's question there and get your thoughts on COVID as it impacts the workplace where you're at, because I've talked to some executives who have told me they're amazed at how much work has gotten done with people staying from home. In fact, we had Hao Tai Tang from Ford. He says their productivity has actually gone up. But when I interviewed Tom Dahl from Subaru, he said, I want everybody back in the office, because some of our best ideas come from a casual conversation in the hallway or over a cup of coffee. What are your thoughts? Let people stay home, or you want them all back?
I think both are right. And in fact, in our business, I would say we have seen improvements in productivity, and we are quite lucky to have organized ourselves technologically over the last couple of years to be able to run basically the whole business remotely. So when we first started the lockdown in the middle of March, that's the end of our fiscal year at the end of March. And I'm like, can we really close the books? Everything can be done remotely. You're all set. And yes, no problems. But this point about, meeting up at the lunchroom or the coffee machine or whatever, and those sorts of collisions that yield creativity and new ideas. I've actually written to our staff to say, I personally miss that. And so virtually, can we meet? Please write to me. Please, let's set up 30 minutes. I'll find time for anybody who wants to talk, because I miss that. And so I have talked over the last couple of months to maybe more than 50 of our people in this way, sharing ideas and so forth. And I'm basically hoping that that rolls out to the rest of our organization so that those kinds of collisions, let's say, continue even when we're in this remote working environment.
Jeff, you talk about the importance of digitizing your business on the corporate side. You talked about in terms of sales, F&I, and the buying experience. One thing we haven't heard much about, though, is the digitization and the connectivity in your vehicles themselves. You're not quite at full OTA for your vehicles, and we've been waiting for a new generation of infotainment system. Can you talk about that a little bit?
And we'll need a quick answer. We're down to the very end here.
Okay, sorry. We introduced our first connected vehicles with the Mazda 3 and CX-30, or I should say CX-30, and now we're backcasting that into all of the current generation of Mazda 3s for all of those customers. I think it's an extremely important element to improve loyalty going forward and create a connection with customers. We're not trying at this stage to monetize that as some manufacturers are, but the focus is more about building a relationship with customers and getting a connection with our brand.
And with that, unfortunately, we're going to have to wrap it up. Jeff Guyton, president of Mazda North America, thank you so much for joining us on today's show.
I really enjoyed talking to all of you. Thank you.
Yeah. Brian and Chris, great having the both of you on board as well.
Real quick, shout out to Dan Ryan from your Mazda DC office. He was in a bad car wreck. He's on the mend. Go Dan. Keep getting.
Thank you so much, Brian. Go Dan.
Yeah. Thanks for that. See you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Autoline this week partnered with the Consulate General of Canada in Detroit to produce this episode.